Hello everyone, today I am here with a new interesting video where I am going to explain how you can use the large language model like Gemini 2.5 Pro or the Claude to just fix the issues starting from the easy category to the most complicated one. As you can see on my screen, this is the very high level application flow, and I was supposed to create a transformation from one standard to the another. Here, if you just see, we have two systems. Then we have a connector which is taking a data from these two systems, transforming into the specific standard XYZ, and then I am loading the data into the Postgres. Until this point, everything was working fine. And then I got into the situation where I have to expose the data from a Postgres DB to through the API. The other thing which I have to do is I have to take the data from the Postgres, which is an XYZ standard, and I have to convert it to the different standard, which is ABC, and store in the MongoDB. But along with the MongoDB, I have to create a copy of a standard ABC into the Postgres as well. Right? When I was writing this transformation, I just got into a various issue, and I can just categorize them in a 6 category, which you can see on this screen in a red color, in a red rectangular border box, like module not found error, which is a easy to fix, name error, attributes error. We know it's a very easy error to fix. But time zone handling, this is really something where you have to write a parsing logic. First, you have to understand which data point is actually causing this issue. Then you have to write a parsing logic. Foreign key violation, again, you have to just look at the data and figure it out why this is happening. Then we have some programming error, which is related to the SQLAlchemy through which we are making a connection to the DB. Then we have the most complicated, challenging, and the interesting category of bug, which is related to the concurrency and the transaction. And then the last one is again not easy, not difficult, but a medium, complexity, which is DB setup related issue. So these are the 6 different category I just ran into, and I thought that should I give it a chance to the large language model like Claude or Gemini, and then I thought I should start with the Gemini 2.5 because it provides the largest context window where we can set the context properly because my code base is very large. Right. So before I just get into the demo part where I show you that, I just wanted to show you, the current log from the server, basically on a server side, right? So this is where the server is running. So this is the transformation logic which is happening, and this is the point where the server is getting a request. Then it runs all the transformation, and at the end you can see all the errors are gone. So there are no errors. So basically I was having a 21 records which are supposed to be transformed, and when I started, nothing was getting processed. Then I take a help from the Gemini. It suggested few things, and then I ran into the error where all the 21 records were failing. And I'm going to explain all these things, how I just requested, how I just created my prompt to request the large language model to help me with the errors which I was getting. And then 21 error just reduce it down to 2, and eventually, as you can see on my server, all the errors are resolved, and all these errors are falling into these 6 different categories which I just showed you. So let's get into the demo part. And so what you need for that, you need a Google Studio, so you can just type a Google AI Studio, and here in this side run setting, you can just select the latest model. I just picked this one, which is released on 6th of May, I guess, right? So you can just use the latest one, whatever it is for you, right? So the very first issue which I got into the DB related issue, because that is the fundamental thing. Once you have a data setup, then only you can go ahead. The error was very simple. I was trying to set up a tables, with the SQL schema, which I have, on the Postgres side. So what error I was running into, let me just quickly show you my setup file. This is how it looks like, So this is how it looks. So what I was doing is I was using a plus symbol, to just concatenating a string. So you can see this is the syntax I was using, but Postgres doesn't allow that, right? So this is not allowed by the Postgres. That's the reason it was failing, right? So it is not hard for me to figure it out, but still I want to see whether the Gemini can be able to help me on top, right? So then it is able to help that, right? It just suggested me, okay, you are using this one, which is not being supported by, Postgres. So you have to use this syntax. So there are a few more syntax. You can use the concat as well, right? So when I did that, I was able to fix that issue and everything was working fine. Then I ran into the another issue, which are more related to the pydantic settings, which is not, imported correctly. So again, it helps a lot, to just fix that issue. it just provided, okay, why you need to import that. So it gives you a very detail, right? I just forget to just, import that. So that's not something which, I should be relying on Gemini, because it's very easy to fix. And everybody understand how to fix all these kind of stuff, right? This is where the things become little tricky, right? What was happening here is, this is just related to the state, right? Because what was happening is I was just making a connection to the DB. So here you can see the DB connection when it is starting up, the DB connection was correct. But when later on, the state being changed at that point of time, it is just still referring to the older credential, right? And why it was happening? It was happening because I was using a reload option with the UV count, right? And this is where, it becomes very tricky, because I was not aware, because Gemini just suggested me to check the credential, check the setup, and I know that, the during the startup, the connection was being made, right? So I just told, Gemini, don't research from the context where you feel that the credential is wrong, because initially when we are just making a request at that point of time, the database is initializing, the connection is being made correctly, right? Then it, start thinking from the reload option, which we use for the UV count, right? So if I just search reload, so we can see here, right? This is where, possible cause in the debugging step. So when I suggested Gemini, okay, there could be a possibility that it is referring to the older credential, because I changed, the database credential in between, right? Then it's suggested you have this reload active. It is possible through less common for this specific symptom that the reloader is somehow involved in the caching and using an older version of the setting object for the SQLAlchemy, right? With the engine and the Async session local for process and stop and after the initial start, right? Then it suggested don't use a reload. And when I start, and along with that, it just suggested a lot of, other things to be checked. But actually, I was having this issue with the reload only. So I just stopped using that. And then I was able to make the connection. These kind of small issue, it looks very easy when you know why this is happening. But, when you are not aware of all these things, you have to just look at the log, and you have to just look each and every line of code and see what's going on, right? And then I get into the issue, where, everything is passing, but none of the data is being transformed, right? So you can see on my screen now, it's, everything is 000, right? So what was happening is, the logic, which we have, that was not correct, right? So basically things were having some issues. So what it suggested? It suggested multiple things. Okay, can you check this? Can you check that? Then I just tested. Then it suggested, okay, what could be the proper problem which you need to fix. So what he suggested, this is what it suggested. Define SQLAlchemy table object for this staging table, modify for all. So what was happening? Why none of the data was being inserted? Everything is being passed because it has to use the table name. The methods to use is pg insert table object, right? Which was not the case, right? And that's the reason it was just failing, right? So you have to just read the, and if you just see the thought behind these are really awesome way in which it is trying to debug the issue, right? So that's the first reason. It's just figure it out how I am trying to just insert the record in my logic, and then it figures out we have to use this one rather than using a different syntax which I was using, which is older one, right? So then, once I have applied this fix, then we get into the issue where, we were having a different issues. Like now, all the 21 records were failing. And why that was failing? Because all the upserts are creating a transaction. And this is again, simple name error where, one method was not, imported correctly. It was able to just figure out all these things and just keep sharing, all these kind of information. As you can see, I just went to do just get into a lot of different kind of issues, right? this is where, this invalid request error happens, where the concurrent operations are not permitted, right? So we can see here, even if it is related to the concurrency, it was able to figure it out and debug the issue, where if we want to do that, we have to put a lot of print statement, we have to use a lot of analytical understanding of the code, or analytical power of ourselves to see, I mean, where we have to put, print a statement where the things may go wrong, and we have to just give it a hit and try a lot, right? Just to get, I mean, where the problem is, right? Then, we got into the issue where, all the records were failing because we have fixed our syntax, which was silently failing. It was not giving any error, but still none of the records were being processed. But now we made the changes, and now we are getting in the situation where the concurrency is actually creating a problem for us. There was an issue, one table was not being found. And why it was not being found? Because the DB setup which we were having is, we were having a, upper and lower case mix. But in Postgres, if you do not enclose that table name with the double quotes, then what happens? It's just, get defaulted with the lower cases, right? But in our code, still it is referring to the DB setup based on the mix of upper and lower case in a table name, right? So that's why the very first transaction very first SQL statement was being failed, and because of that, the entire transaction is being failed. And the concurrency is, what is happening is, concurrently, all the sequels are actually just getting fired within a transaction to just, expedite the process, right? And that is where, it helps me to just figure it out. You are just trying to run all the SQL from the transaction at the same time, from the multiple transaction, which is actually causing all these issues, right? So it was able to help me to figure out all these concurrency. And then I introduced, the save points, and I was just rolling back in case if there is a failure, to just allow other SQL to just get executed properly. So I just introduced the checkpoint and all those kind of stuff. Right. So here you can see, the lot of issues. So it's also helped me to, fix the issue where, the Postgres was not able to create the table which we were expecting the name, right? Because we were not having a double quote in our DB setup. We figured that out issue. That is again, very complicated issue to be solved. It looks like it's easy, but it is not, right? Now, once we have fixed those different categories of issues, now we can see we get into the number of errors is 7. So we started with nothing was being processed, getting a silent failure. Then we then we just verify there was a syntax error, where the syntax is a little bit different what Postgres is expecting, which is silently being failed. None of the record were being processed. Then we fixed that. Then we got into the issue where all the 21 records were failing. We figured out there is an issue related to the one of the table is not present because of how the Postgres actually handles, the table name cases. If it is not with double quote, then it is going to default with the lowercase for all the characters, right? Now we get into the situation where we fix all these issues, and now we are having a seven issues. So in out of this, we have this foreign key violation error, and we have a time related error as well, where the parsing is actually not working as expected. Right. So if I just posted all these 7 different error which I was getting, and then it was able to figure it out why this is happening. So attribute error, there was one method expected which was commented out mistakenly, and then it suggested, okay, you have to fix that. Okay. Then I just go ahead and make those changes, whatever is suggested by the Gemini. And then I just get into the another issue, I keep sharing, okay, this is what I'm getting. And but you have to make sure whenever you get into the issue and whenever you want to just share that information, you have to be very analytical. Because what I figured out when it was trying to just give you the entire code base, then I realized that, it was supposed to have 1200 lines of code, which I have written, but when what it's suggesting, it's just having an 800 line of code. So basically it just removed 400 lines of code, which is quite weird, which is not something that should happen just to fix one issue, right? So that is where you have to be very aware, and you have to just keep looking in what it is suggesting, whether that suggestion is actually makes sense to you or not. So it's not that blindly we can just take that and put it, whatever it's suggesting. You have to be very analytical. You have to figure it out what it is suggesting and why it is suggesting, and then you have to make a call based on your experience and the expertise in the code base. right? So it suggested few things, and still there was some problem. We are still getting 7 error, but those errors are again a different one to handle. Again, so it says that okay, again now we are getting into the different issue where it says the another method was not present. Then we have another issue where it says that this data is not present in this. And so basically there are multiple iterations where I just keep getting an issue and just keep reporting here, and I just keep getting the responses which I have to analyze and figure it out whether those suggestions are really making sense to me or not, depending upon what kind of data we have. And now we were able to reduce that 7 records to the 2 errors, and those 2 errors are basically a foreign key violation. So that is definitely indicating that we are now having some messed up data, either some messed up data or some missing data. And Gemini was able to figure it out and help me with just adding that additional missing record as well, right? And once that happens, then this is what the server says, where all the records got transferred and there was no error whatsoever in the final result, right? Awesome. So this is how you can utilize, these tools to just have your helper, right? You don't have to have a lot of expertise in your team to just fix these kind of issues. But I would highlight one more thing, which is something you have to keep in mind whenever you get into the issue where you are getting a similar kind of response. Then I would suggest switch to the another LLM and see if you can provide a same context, and this can give you this different opinion altogether or a different aspect to look at the bug, right? So this is where you have to be very aware, right? Okay, if it is just getting into the loop where it is suggesting same thing and it is not working, then you have to switch to the LLM as well, right? Then what I did is when I found that the Gemini was not able to help me and responding with a similar kind of response which is not fixing the issue, and when I just try to compare it and figure out what response it is giving, then I realized that it is not something which is completely different from the previous one, and the root cause seems to be known to me, so I know the response which is provided by Gemini is not going to be helping me in that sense, right? So at that point of time, I just switched to Claude and requested this, and then the Claude was precisely provided me why this is happening, right? So if you just see here, this is related to the like these the error you are encountering in Postgres transaction state issue. The invalid SQL transaction error indicates that previous SQL command in the transaction failed, causing Postgres to abort the entire transaction. After that point, all subsequent commands are ignored until the transaction is either rollback or committed, right? And that is where it gives you some kind of sense, like, I mean, whether this analysis and this this conclusion is making sense to the response that Gemini is giving or not, right? So that is where, if the issue is very complicated in nature and one LLM is not able to help you, you have to just go to the different LLM, create your prompt and just request and see what kind of responses there. So most of the time, by combining the multiple LLMs, you will get a pointer or the response through which your debugging will be much easier, and fixing the issues, complicated issues like concurrency, transaction related issue, or the runtime error, you may just get quick fix or the quick pointer to figure out where the issue can be, right? So there are few tips which I thought would be good for you to just in a long run. So I just summarize, I mean, whatever the issue I have fixed so far, like DB setup related issues, some configuration, some deeper issues related to data, time zone issues, data related SQLAlchemy issues, concurrency and transaction related errors, attribute name module not found error, and the foreign key violation, right, which are runtime error, right? So these are the different errors which I try to fix it, and I was able to fix them, right? So this is what I felt: the code is smarter, not just harder, right? We always heard this, okay, we have to work hard, but now with the help of a LLM, you have to just work smartly rather than just putting the hard work every time, right? So what kind of tips I have for you whenever you get into the issue and you want to take a help from the LLM to get the fix, right? You have to just see precisely report the error. First you have to set the context, like what you are trying to do, but after that you have to just precisely report the error from the logs which you are getting on your server or wherever you are running your application, right? Don't put extra information. Otherwise, it will just get confused and it will just start hallucination and giving you the response which is not at all relevant to your code, right? Iterative process meaning it's not a one-shot fix. You just understand this LLM is actually getting all the intelligence based on the data available publicly, right? So if it is possible that in one iteration you will not get the response, right? So you have to just do the multiple iteration, but you have to keep in a mind, you have to see the response. It is not similar to what you have previously, and if that is happening and your issue is not being resolved, as I mentioned, the strategies, you have to switch to the different LLMs with the same context, provide the error and try to see if you are getting a response which is making more sense to you, because you are the owner of your code and you understand the code more than anyone else, right? So you have to be very aware and you have to see what kind of response you are getting to fix the issue, and accordingly you have to take the decision and switch to the multiple LLM. And again, your team is always there. You can just always reach out to them if these LLMs are not able to fix the issue. Understand the suggestion, right? As I mentioned, it's very important, right? Don't copy paste because it is having a lot of issues. And the interesting thing is it always change the strategy with the every response. So you have to keep in a mind whatever the response you are getting to fix the issue, it actually adhere to the standard you are following in your code base or not, right? Because if there is not the proper context for all the code base, for the entire code base, which I think you will provide, in that situation, the response it is going to give you, it could follow a different standard. It could have a vulnerability. So you have to make sure whatever suggestion is being, you have to first analyze before you actually utilize that. And I would suggest always try to run in isolation before you actually integrate in your actual code base, right? If you have a multiple error, tackle them one by one. As I mentioned, I was having a lot of issues, right? That is where you have to prioritize the error, like which error is easy to fix, which you can fix by yourself. You don't have to go to the large language model for that, right? So if there are attributes error, method error, name error, if something is missing, module is not found. So these kind of issues, you can just stick to your knowledge or expertise and you can fix them. But whenever you get into the situation where the things are very complicated and very complex, at that point of time, you can just go to the LLM and try to see how it can help. System level view, while LLMs are great at code specific, remember to also provide a context that we have already talked about it, right? It is always important to tell what kind of infrastructure you are using, because if you are having a Docker based servers running, this might have some connection problem as well. Most of the time, how you are setting it up, how you are running your application code, where that application code is deciding whether it is able to make the connection or not. If you have a very proper logging, and if those kind of thing is properly set up, and if you can provide a system level information as well, where you feel you have to make this judgment, the kind of issue you are getting, whether that is that could be related to the infrastructure or not. And that is where the experience comes into the picture. The efficiency build is the last one. It's actually definitely saved a lot of time for me, right? Especially for the complex SQLAlchemy async behavior. And we all know that whenever we have this concurrency, right? Whenever we have this asynchronous mode enable in our application, whenever we have a data related issue, right? It's very hard to debug, right? So that's what I'm saying. Use these LLMs as much as possible, but keep it for the complicated scenario, because if it is a very simple and easy to fix it by yourself. Otherwise you just get into this hallucination world where LLM is trying to just respond to every query you are asking, right? So these are the main 6 tips: precise error reporting, iterative process, understand the suggestions, focus on the LLM, focus the LLM just to fix a one error at a time. System level view, which is just for framing your context, depending upon whether the issue you are facing could be related to the system level or the infrastructure or not. Then efficiency boost, right? So you have to see where you have to use LLM. You have to be very smart in that. It's not like if you are getting a simple issue, just go to the LLM and start directly go for that. I hope this is actually going to help you a lot in your day-to-day work, and how you utilize these LLM, and just share in the comment section if you utilize any of the LLMs to fix the issues you are facing almost on a daily basis. Share your experience in the comment and suggestions so that the bigger audience, the community can also try to understand or learn from you what kind of assistance you are getting from these large language models. So that's it from my side for this video. I hope this video can help you guys to make use of these AI tools more effectively and more efficiently in long run, because that is actually going to be the future, and we have to start using them as much as possible and as soon as possible. So as thanks for watching this, and one more request which I have, if you haven't subscribed for my channel, please subscribe for my channel as well. And if you feel this video can help your friends, colleagues and group, please feel free to share with them. And one more time, thanks again. Thanks for watching this video, and stay healthy and keep learning new things.